Walter Clemens never imagined that the rusted keys to an abandoned mansion in Charleston would lead him to a discovery that would not only change his life, but reveal one of the best-kept secrets of World War II. At 78, inheriting the property from a great-aunt the family considered merely an eccentric recluse, Walter expected to find piles of dusty knickknacks and overdue bills. Instead, he discovered a two-story library filled with international correspondence, Swiss bank documents, and certificates from famous auction houses. Margaret wasn't who everyone thought she was. But it was in the third week, when an ornate key finally opened the garage locked for decades, that Walter encountered something impossible to explain. Under a dark green tarp, in impeccable condition, sat a 1969 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow that looked like it had rolled straight off the showroom floor. The odometer read only 12,847 miles. The engine purred like new. And in the trunk was a military-grade safe professionally integrated into the chassis, with bank-level security systems that cost the equivalent of a mansion at the time. Inside it, Walter discovered Margaret's true identity, an international art agent who spent decades saving European cultural treasures during and after the war, operating a secret network that protected entire families' historical patrimony. The contents of the safe were worth more than $2 million back in 1995. Austrian aristocracy jewels, Tahitian black pearls with 18th-century provenance, rubies from the Russian imperial period, and documents signed by Winston Churchill regarding secret cultural operations. But the historical value was incalculable. Correspondence revealing the whereabouts of artworks lost during World War II, evidence of a silent heroine who saved humanity's treasures while the world burned. Harold Mitchell, the safe specialist Walter called for help, was shocked. This was a 1968 Mosler double guard, used only by central banks and governments. The installation required military knowledge. Margaret had transformed a luxury car into an undetectable mobile vault, guarding secrets that could rewrite history books. But the most disturbing discovery was in the sealed letter Margaret left behind. "To my heir brave enough to search." She knew someone would eventually find her secret operation. She knew her true identity would be revealed. And she left specific instructions about what to do with a collection that wasn't just hers, but belonged to entire European families who had entrusted their last treasures to a woman everyone considered an eccentric recluse. Now Walter faces an impossible decision. What do you do when you discover you've inherited not just a fortune, but also the responsibility of continuing to protect secrets that shaped the course of history? How do you honor the legacy of a woman who sacrificed her family reputation to save humanity's cultural heritage? And the question that won't go away, if Margaret managed to operate in the shadows for decades without raising suspicion, how many other eccentric recluses are out there, guarding secrets that could change everything we think we know about our past? The rusted key to an abandoned garage ended up opening far more than Walter could ever have imagined. Walter Clemens was 78 years old when he inherited his great-aunt Margaret's mansion in Charleston, South Carolina. The property had been abandoned for over 2 decades, covered by wild vegetation that had taken over the once meticulous gardens. The red brick walls were stained by time, and the windows with grayish-blue shutters looked like closed eyes of a sleeping giant. Walter had never visited the house during his aunt's lifetime, as she was, known in the family as an eccentric and reclusive woman. Now, with the heavy keys in his trembling hands, he prepared to explore the secrets that Margaret had left behind. The lawyer had mentioned that the property included not only the main house, but also several auxiliary structures scattered across the 15 acres of land. The first week was dedicated to a superficial cleaning of the main house, removing decades of dust and debris. Walter discovered that Margaret had been a compulsive collector, accumulating antiques, rare books, and art objects throughout the residence. Each room revealed layers of history, from 19th-century family portraits to personal correspondence carefully organized in mahogany drawers. Margaret's personal library occupied 2 entire floors, with wooden rolling ladders that still worked perfectly. Walter felt like an archaeologist exploring a lost civilization, each discovery revealing more about the complex personality of his distant relative. The electricity bills found in a drawer showed that Margaret had kept the power running until her death, suggesting she had prepared the house to be preserved. It was during the third week of exploration that Walter decided to investigate the property's external structures. There was a stable converted into a workshop, an abandoned greenhouse with broken glass, and a 3-bay garage that remained locked with a rusted padlock. The set of keys that the lawyer had given him included a peculiar key, heavy and ornate, which Walter had not yet been able to identify its function. When he tried to open the garage padlock, he discovered that the ornate key fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for that purpose. The mechanism resisted for a few moments before yielding with a satisfying click that echoed through the silent courtyard. Walter took a deep breath, preparing for another discovery in his journey of cataloging Margaret's inheritance. The garage door opened with a prolonged creak, revealing an interior plunged in twilight. Sunbeams filtered through small dusty windows, creating golden shafts that danced in the air laden with suspended particles. The smell of old motor oil and leather mixed with the aroma of mold and old wood, creating an almost nostalgic atmosphere. Walter groped along the wall until he found an electrical switch, and when the fluorescent lamps flickered to life, he almost lost his balance at what he saw. In the center of the garage, covered by a dark green waxed tarp, was the unmistakable silhouette of an automobile. The elegant shape and classic proportions suggested a luxury vehicle, probably from the 1960s or 1970s. Walter approached slowly, his heart racing with the anticipation of another extraordinary discovery. With hands trembling from excitement, Walter began to carefully remove the tarp that protected the mysterious vehicle. The waxed fabric was perfectly preserved, without holes or tears, indicating that someone had taken special care to protect what was underneath. As the tarp slid away, revealing first the windshield, then the hood, and finally the entire body, Walter felt his legs weaken. Before him stood a 1969 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow in impeccable condition, its navy blue paint shining as if it had been waxed yesterday. The chrome was free of oxidation, the tires looked new, and through the windows he could see a cream leather interior that seemed untouched by time. Walter walked around the vehicle several times, barely believing what his eyes were seeing. This wasn't just a well-preserved antique car, it was a museum specimen worth a considerable fortune. Walter was impressed by his great-aunt's dedication to preserving not only the house, but also this automotive treasure. When he turned the key in the ignition, the 6.75-liter V8 engine awakened with a smooth and powerful purr, like a giant feline awakening from deep sleep. The sound was mesmerizing, a mechanical symphony that spoke of refined British engineering and meticulous attention to detail. Walter found the Rolls-Royce keys hanging on a small hook on the garage wall, along with a laminated card containing detailed maintenance information. The card revealed that Margaret had hired a company specialized in classic cars for monthly maintenance visits, even without driving the vehicle for years. The records showed regular oil changes, battery checks, tire rotations, and even engine warm-up sessions to keep it in operational condition. While exploring the luxurious interior of the Rolls-Royce, Walter noticed that every detail had been maintained in perfect condition. The cream leather seats were soft and flexible, without visible cracks or wear. The walnut wood panel gleamed with a mirror finish, and all the instruments worked perfectly when he tested the various functions. The air conditioning system blew fresh, clean air, and even the AM/FM radio picked up local stations with crystal clarity. Walter discovered that the glove compartment contained documents organized in a leather folder, including the vehicle's original registration, authenticity certificates, and complete maintenance records since 1969. The odometer showed only 12,147 miles, a surprisingly low number that confirmed the car had been used very little during its more than 50 years of existence. It was when Walter decided to check the trunk that his discovery took a completely unexpected direction. The rear lid opened with a fluid and silent movement, revealing a compartment lined with velvety carpet that maintained the characteristic luxury of the British brand. But what immediately caught his attention was not the impeccable finish of the trunk, but a compact and heavy steel safe installed in the right corner of the compartment. The safe was not an amateur addition. It had been professionally integrated into the vehicle, with metal brackets welded to the chassis to ensure it remained secure during any movement. The safe's combination was electronic, with a digital panel that blinked red, indicating it was sealed and active. Walter had never seen anything like it in his life, and immediately understood that Margaret had modified this Rolls-Royce for very specific and secret purposes. Walter spent the next 2 hours thoroughly examining the safe and its installation, trying to understand the extent of the modification his great-aunt had commissioned. The mounting system was military-grade quality, with titanium screws and welds that showed high-quality professional work. The safe itself appeared to be from a brand specialized in banking security, not the type of product found in common hardware stores. Walter noticed there was a small ventilation system connected to the safe, suggesting its contents might be sensitive to temperature or humidity variations. He also discovered that the safe's electrical system was connected to the car's battery, ensuring continuous power even when the vehicle was turned off. The sophistication of the system made Walter realize that Margaret was not simply an eccentric collector, but someone who had taken extraordinary precautions to protect something of extreme value. After much reflection, Walter decided to look for clues in the house that might reveal the safe's combination, or at least explain its existence. He returned to Margaret's library and began systematically examining her personal papers, looking for references to the Rolls-Royce or anything related to valuables or investments. Among the correspondence, he found several letters from an insurance company specialized in art objects and collectibles, suggesting that Margaret possessed items of considerable value that required special protection. He also discovered documents from a Swiss private bank, with references to numbered accounts and security deposits dating back to the 1970s. Walter began to form an image of Margaret as a much more complex and prosperous woman than the family had ever imagined. The combination of evidence suggested that the safe in the Rolls-Royce trunk contained something of inestimable value, possibly related to his great-aunt's international financial activities. The next morning, Walter decided to consult a safe specialist to evaluate his options. He searched the internet and found Harold Mitchell, a retired technician who had worked for decades with banking security systems in Charleston. When Harold arrived at the property and saw the safe integrated into the Rolls-Royce, his eyes widened with surprise and admiration. He explained to Walter that this was a 1968 Mosler double-guard model, one of the most secure safes ever manufactured, normally used only by central banks and governments. The professional installation and integration with the vehicle's electrical system showed meticulous planning and considerable investment. Harold estimated that the value of just the vehicle modification could have cost the equivalent of a luxury house at the time. He also warned Walter that forcing it open could completely destroy the contents, as the safe had anti-tampering protection systems that included pyrotechnic devices. Harold suggested that the best approach would be to systematically search for the combination in Margaret's documents, as a person prudent enough to install such a system would certainly have left a way of access for legitimate heirs. Walter and Harold spent the rest of the day methodically reviewing every drawer, folder, and file in the house. It was in an apparently innocent recipe book that Walter found the first real clue. Between pages, dedicated to French desserts, Margaret had pasted a small card with numbers that made no sense as ingredients or temperatures. The card contained a sequence of 8 digits written in faded blue ink. 1969-1947. Harold immediately recognized the pattern as a possible combination, where the first 4 digits could represent the car's year, 1969, and the last 4 could have personal meaning for Margaret. Walter vaguely remembered that 1947 was Margaret's birth year, information he had seen in family documents. With his heart racing with expectation, Walter and Harold returned to the garage to test the discovered combination. The safe's digital panel blinked patiently in red, waiting for the correct sequence to be entered. Harold instructed Walter on how to enter the digits properly, explaining that some old electronic safes were sensitive to the speed and timing of data entry. Walter slowly typed 19691947, each number being confirmed by a small electronic beep. After the last digit, there was a moment of tense silence that seemed to last an eternity. Then, the panel changed from red to green, accompanied by a series of internal mechanical clicks that indicated the disarming of the locking systems. Walter looked at Harold, who smiled and made an encouraging nod. It was the moment of truth after decades of mystery, The safe would finally reveal its secrets. Walter also saw legal documents wrapped in protective plastic, some old photographs, and what appeared to be authenticity certificates from a famous auction house. Harold remained respectfully silent while Walter began examining each item with the care of a museum curator. Margaret's meticulous organization was evident even in the way she had arranged the safe's contents, each object positioned for maximum protection and easy identification. Walter opened the safe door with reverence, as if he were opening a sacred sarcophagus. The interior was impeccably organized, with velvet dividers that carefully protected each stored item. The first thing that caught his attention was a thick envelope sealed with red wax seal, which contained the Clemens family coat of arms. Next to the envelope, there were several small jeweler's boxes, each labeled with handwritten descriptions in French. The sealed envelope contained a 3-page letter handwritten by Margaret herself, addressed, "To my heir who is brave enough to search." The letter revealed that Margaret had been much more than an eccentric recluse. She had been an international art agent, facilitating the acquisition and protection of valuable works during and after World War II. She explained that the items in the safe represented her personal insurance policy against difficult times, a carefully curated collection of jewelry, historical documents, and small works of art that had been entrusted to her by European families during the turbulent war years. Margaret wrote that she had spent decades verifying the legitimacy of each piece, trying to locate original heirs when possible, but that the remaining items in the safe had no known or traceable owners. She instructed her heir to consult the most recent appraisal certificates, updated annually until 1995, which showed an estimated total value of more than $2 million in prices from that era. Walter spent the following days meticulously cataloging each item from the safe with Harold's help, who had become not just a technical consultant, but a friend invested in the discovery. The small jeweler's boxes contained extraordinary pieces, a diamond brooch that had belonged to Austrian aristocracy, black Tahitian pearl earrings with documented provenance to the 18th century, and a ring with Burmese rubies that the certificates dated as being from the Russian imperial period. Each piece came accompanied by complete documentation about its history, provenance, and periodic evaluations conducted by international specialists. Walter discovered that Margaret had been incredibly diligent in maintaining detailed records, including professional photographs of each item and correspondence with museums and auction houses about their authenticity. The total value of the collection, considering the market appreciation since 1995, had probably tripled, transforming Walter from a middle-class retiree into a truly wealthy man. Among the historical documents, Walter found items that left both him and Harold speechless. There were letters signed by important historical figures, including correspondence from Winston Churchill about art acquisitions during the war, and documents related to works lost during the world conflict. Margaret had apparently operated a discreet network that helped preserve European cultural heritage, working with museums, private collectors, and even government agencies. A special folder contained evidence that some of the most famous works lost during World War II had actually been saved and redistributed through Margaret's network. Walter understood that his great-aunt had been a silent hero of cultural preservation, a woman who had dedicated her life to protecting humanity's treasures during one of the most turbulent periods in history. The magnitude of her actions and the historical value of her collection were simply overwhelming. Harold suggested that Walter immediately contact lawyers specialized in international law and cultural heritage, as the discovery had implications that went far beyond monetary value. Some of the items in the safe could have historical significance sufficient to interest governments, national museums, and international cultural heritage organizations. Walter also realized he would need to make important ethical decisions about the collection's fate, considering Margaret's expressed wishes to continue protecting these treasures. His great-aunt's letter included detailed suggestions about respectable institutions that could continue her preservation mission, should Walter choose not to keep the collection personally. Among these suggestions was the creation of a private foundation that could manage the items appropriately, ensuring they continued to be studied, appreciated, and preserved for future generations. In the following months, Walter embarked on a complex journey of legal verifications, professional appraisals, and decisions about the future of Margaret's extraordinary inheritance. He discovered that his great-aunt had been even more providential than he had imagined, having established trust funds and legal structures that would facilitate the collection's transition to new guardians. With the help of a team of lawyers, curators, and art specialists, Walter managed to validate the legitimacy of the entire collection and his own legal ownership of the items. Some pieces were returned to European museums as donations, honoring Margaret's altruistic spirit, while others were sold through prestigious auction houses, generating substantial resources. Walter decided to keep some pieces of personal significance and use part of the resources to establish the Margaret Clemens Foundation for cultural heritage preservation. The Rolls-Royce, in turn, was restored to its original configuration and donated to the Charleston Classic Automobile Museum, where Margaret's story could inspire future generations. Today, at 82 years old, Walter reflects on how his life completely changed when he decided to explore his great-aunt's locked garage. The discovery not only made him financially secure, but also connected him with a rich and inspiring family history he had never known. The Margaret Clemens Foundation has already helped preserve dozens of artworks and historical documents, continuing the silent legacy of an extraordinary woman who dedicated her life to protecting cultural treasures. Walter frequently visits the museum where the Rolls-Royce is displayed, watching visitors discover the fascinating story behind the elegant vehicle and its secret safe. He learned that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unexpected places, patiently waiting for someone brave enough to search. Margaret's inheritance was not only monetary, but also a reminder that a dedicated person can make a significant difference in the world, even working in the shadows and being misunderstood by those closest to them.